Hello, and welcome to the Taylor Seminars, where we talk about how Taylor Swift turns life into poetry. My name is Hannah. I'm here with my co-host, Exquisite. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, Hannah.
And we are so giddy and excited because we are joined by an amazing special guest. It is Rob Sheffield of Rolling Stone magazine, who is a dear friend, but also just an amazing music writer. You may know him from his reviews of albums like Folklore. You may also know him from his list of 1 million songs, Taylor Swift songs ranked. And here he is. Hello, Rob.
Hello. Oh my gosh, what a joy to be on this podcast with the absolute cream of the Swiftian scholarship crop.
Oh my
It is
gosh.
such an honor. Hannah,
Uh,
an exquisite, unbelievable.
Thank you. Rob, you are another reason we wanted you on here is because you have something special coming out soon. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. It's a book. It's called Heartbreak is the National Anthem. And as you can guess from the title, it's about Taylor Swift. It's about her music, her cultural impact, her artistic longevity, the absolute insanity of every detail of her career. It's Heartbreak is the National Anthem, How Taylor Swift Reinvented Pop Music. And it comes out on November 12th.
Oh
What?
my goodness.
What
So soon.
And
So
also, what a
soon.
great title! Like, obviously from New Romantics. I think it's on number two, right? On your rank.
Yes. God, I love New Romantics. Came out 2 years ago today as we speak.
Uh,
Oh,
Sorry,
happy birthday,
one,
well,
1989.
yeah, 10 years ago, right?
10 years ago. Yes.
It,
Taylor's
wh-
version, the
what is
kosher version, is
That's
Yes.
a year
right.
old.
That's right. No, and I think that's a really big claim, how she changed pop music. It's obviously true, but to see it on the title of a book is like, whoa.
Well, just for her, there's no parallel to her anywhere in her history. And it's so funny, as someone who's been writing about her since our song came out, basically, it's really funny to see how slow people were to notice the uniqueness of her career, that there's no other star who's had 18 years like this, where they're, just constantly rising and reaching their peak of commercial clout, cultural clout, and artistic ingenuity all the time. It's absolutely crazy. The Beatles lasted half this long.
That's so true. Although
The Beatles
Paul
had
Paul is
9 years.
Paul is still kicking. So
Oh, Paul will never stop
He-
kicking.
He's around, but he's no Taylor Swift. Like, oh my,
no, but remember when he was at the Taylor Swift concert and he got a taste of like Beatlemania, but Taylor mania, like in the
got the
stadium?
experience from the outside.
That was so beautiful. Yes. Well, and they're longtime friends, and they're both total weirdos in the same way. They're both really freaky about numbers and putting little details and Easter eggs in their album. Taylor said from the beginning, when she was just 16, she was already talking about how she wanted to do things like Paul McCartney used to do on Beatles records, like have a little backwards messages. It's just absolutely crazy that she's a 16-year-old country singer and she's already saying, well, and explaining to the interviewer, well, the Beatles used to do this on the White Album, where if you play the record backwards, you got like a little secret message. And that, so they are absolutely linked. So it's really funny. My last book was about the Beatles, Dreaming the Beatles.
It
And this
only
one's,
makes sense.
yes. And this one's about Taylor, and it's the same. She and Paul are absolutely the only two of their species.
I love that. And to have an artist be at that level and to write so personally as well. I think Taylor is so good at that. Is a great segue into the song we're going to be talking about today. And don't
It
worry,
really,
yeah, don't worry, listeners. We will talk more about Rob's book at the end of this, but we definitely do want to get into the song, and I'm sure we'll be putting in so much Taylor lore throughout this. But yes, the song that we are talking about today is The Prophecy, which is track 26 of the Tortured Poets Department slash Anthology. Exquisite and I have been looking forward to this episode for so long, and Rob was like, I need to do this song. We're like, okay,
Unbelievable.
join us.
This song, I am so honored that I get to do this song with you. This is my favorite song on the Torture Poets Department, and I'm absolutely excited to talk about it with you too.
Yeah. So no, we are so strap in everybody. We there will be lots of emotions, I'm sure, being emoted. And so to start out, we're gonna actually well, so first the producers for this song were Taylor and Aaron. And so they're I believe also the co-writers, and so that's really cool. Uh
uh, yeah.
and so we're gonna have Rob actually start us off this one, reading the first verse. So Rob, whenever you're ready, you can jump right in.
Ready? I can't. I Are any of us ready, really, for the prophecy? Hand on the throttle. Thought I caught lightning in a bottle. Oh, but it's gone again, and it was written. I got cursed like Eve got bitten. Oh, was it punishment? Pat around when I get home. I guess a lesser woman would have lost hope. A greater woman wouldn't beg, but I looked to the sky and said,
Oh
Uh,
my God.
she's just
Chills.
so good. Oh my God. And before we even get into the lyrics, like, guys, this song has a full orchestra for a reason. It's so big. Like the song is so big sounding.
And yet it starts very intimately. You have I think someone's counting off. I'm gonna guess it's Aaron because he's done that before for other songs.
Mhm.
Counting off like 1, 2, 3, 4 or something. Like it's very whispery, and then you get the little ding 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 guitar, and then
Hand on the throttle.
yeah.
Which, if we start there, I have a question because we know like Taylor has used throttle literally a couple songs before with So High School, and it's like full throttle, happy. But here she's got hand on the throttle, and so we open with the car imagery, and Taylor loves it. So it's either we're going headed for a car crash, or we're like getting in a getaway car. We're doing something like that. But my question is like, is she saying hand on the throttle as in she's trying to go full throttle, or is she trying to stop a car? Like, is she having to stop?
I love that ambiguity.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, yeah, also looking back a little, like when I saw the title, when she dropped it at whatever, 2 a.m., like the prophecy is such like, Taylor loves to do these big word titles, and so that, already you're like, oh, like prophecy. And prophecy, I feel like it can have positive connotations, but I think in the context of this album, I was already thinking like, oh, like this sounds dark, like already, like, and then yeah, we have then this very somber sounding music happening, and then immediately you're like hand on the throttle. Thought I caught lightning in a bottle. So that's and like lightning in a bottle is like how would you describe that? Like um
There.
catching something magical, right? And having it in your hand. But also it's like electricity, right? But then it's gone. And immediately like, oh no, this is a sad song. And it
Yeah, the
just
prophecy is a curse.
yeah, she
Yeah.
could have called it the curse for real.
She
And
really could
also,
have.
it literally says gone again. So the again is like, oh, she's cursed. She's cursed.
She's cursed. Just the
Oh,
sound of this as it begins. There aren't other songs of hers that sound like this. Uh, this Taylor vocal performance, Hannah and I were talking about. This is one of my absolute, just strictly as a vocal performer. If you ignore, pretend she didn't write the song. Pretend she just, found this one. Somebody handed it to her. Just as a singer, her brilliance is so easy to overlook because she's doing so many things in every song as a writer. But to me, this is a top five Taylor vocal performance, strictly as a vocal performer. It's so dramatic. It is so hushed. She doesn't do a lot of her best tricks that she does to show off. It's very
mhm.
stately. It's very hushed the way it begins. It has a real sort of uh, sense of doom from the very beginning.
Yeah, the restraint of it, especially because
Yes.
later on she gets into like real proper begging in her voice. That it's like, whoa.
Well, exquisite. Do you want to talk about this line that you love? I got cursed, or
Oh,
it was written, I got cursed like Eve got bitten.
I love this line particularly because it's wrong. Like it's anachronistic. Eve does not get bitten at all. She does the biting even. So like the act of her, like it really puts you in her mind state where she's either misinterpreting things or she's like she is feeling so down that she can't remember how actual stories go. And as a storyteller, it's like you're feeling like Eve, but um Eve had agency. And so she, in this line, she takes away Eve's agency and she's like, as it was written, so it was always going to happen. I got cursed just like Eve got bitten. So it's like, whoa, there's no agency happening here. This is just things that are happening to her that are terrible. And I just think that's so interesting because Taylor loves to bring in the Bible or like biblical things. And it's like, no, that's wrong. That didn't happen.
Yeah, I know. I
Why?
love that. I think it's like she, I think purposefully, right? Like switches it to make it seem like, oh, like maybe even for even the Bible, the story that we get taught in like Sunday schools
Mhm.
or whatever, like maybe even that, like, did Eve even have agency then, right? Like there was she, or
Exactly.
was she just the scapegoat, the person who was always going to be the one in the wrong? And so yeah, I think that loss of agency is really scary because again, then we get into this idea of like this curse, this prophecy, like that she can't escape from. It's always going to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
Yeah.
and it
It's
brings us back.
oh
Sorry,
go,
Charisma.
go, go. No, you go. You go.
It brings us back to the reputation snakes, doesn't it?
Hmm.
yeah.
And that it's once again, the way Eve was tricked by the serpent is very much the way that Eve got bitten by this prophetic curse. Not
Yeah.
altogether different from Taylor's story in many ways, that in terms of her introduction to the business as just a very young kid who believes things that didn't turn out to be true.
And got bitten a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Um,
yeah. It's very interesting to me because the snake is like the snake as someone who does luring and who like lures Taylor out. Um, it's interesting to think about that because sometimes the snake is fame, but sometimes it's another person. Sometimes Taylor herself is the snake, and here she's a victim of the snake. And it's like, well, what is it that did the biting for her? What cursed her, I think, is something that she's grappling with as well.
Oh, so deep, guys. And I think the so the pad around when I get home, I think is such, I think she is such a fun phrase because later I think we'll come to the wolf imagery, how like a wolf at the moon. So here she's patting, it already sets that scene of her being like trapped, but also like that kind of animalistic imagery, which I also with goes with a lot of um her feeling not like herself, and she feels like, and I love this contrast she has in this next section. I guess a lesser woman would have lost hope. I get a
Yeah.
greater woman wouldn't beg, and so she's like somewhere in the middle where she, and I think in that way she feels trapped, like I wish I could have just lost hope. I wish I wouldn't beg, but she's like right there, so I'm going to do both. I'm going to have hope and beg and look to the sky at some greater power, and we've seen her do that before with like bigger than the whole sky, and things like that. And so we see this lone woman. I feel like to me, I picture like her like in the heath, right, in the moor, and just like I know it says she's at home, but I see her as like just like lost in this vast wilderness in her mind or wherever, and she's like about to scream at the sky or beg at the sky.
yeah, she
Yeah.
has some of
And
her best conversations with this guy.
she
She
really
does.
does. She loves to scream at the sky. I'm thinking like My Tears Ricochet as
Yeah,
well. Uh, I'm also thinking Dare Reader to a house not a home all alone where nobody's there. And she's just pacing. Where I
yeah,
pace my pen because my friends found friends who care.
pacing till she's wide awake.
Oh.
All
Also,
right,
I
go
love
ahead.
how Eve sets us off on the comparisons. Just because something I love about this song, I really love an old fashioned Taylor metaphor party, and she
Yeah.
just she's so out of control in this song. She's an infant, a wolf, a paperweight, a
Oh yeah.
crumbling statue. The last
Oh my
drink drops out of an ink pen, and that's just one verse. She's got a lot of metaphors on deck, so this is
yeah.
kind of easing us into that.
That's true.
A
You're
proper
like,
grapple.
yeah, you're like,
Yes,
She's
oh, there's gonna be only one in the, but no, she has, they're all gonna spill out in a second.
yes.
All right,
It's like,
let me read the chorus and then we can go through that. So she's looking at the sky and saying, "Please, I've been on my knees. Change the prophecy. Don't want money, just someone who wants my company. Let it once be me. Who do I have to speak to about if they can redo the prophecy?"
oh, there's so much happening here. And the very first question I want to ask, is what is the prophecy? What is the prophecy she's trying to redo in this part? Because
Is
I like of the idea that it changes sometimes, like a little bit, but from this, like from the very first verse into chorus, what do you think the prophecy is?
Yeah, I think to me, it definitely seems like with like the throttle imagery, it's definitely like you thought you had this cosmic love, like a love, right? But it's suddenly disappeared. And so she's the prophecy is I just want someone who loves me and wants to stay with me, who doesn't care about the fame, but either as a positive or a negative, as like, clout or as a dead weight, right? And I just want it to be me. And I want, yeah. So that's like the interpretation of the prophecy. I did quote marks in my head.
Yeah, I think it's the prophecy that she's doomed to be alone, and that she feels like there is this curse, and she, in very typical style, is being very reasonable, and who can I negotiate with? Could you please direct me to whoever is in charge of the prophecy of the future of my life? I'd like to make a deal with them. I'd like to make a counter offer. You know, let's be reasonable about this. And for her to have held out hope all these years that this part of her life was coming, and the sense of bitterness as she realizes that she held on to that hope for too long. It was time
Yeah,
to go,
no.
and she didn't go.
It's because she did write "It's Time to Go," and then I feel like part of that feels like she was trying to reassure herself that if she had to, she knows when it's time to go. But then in the prophecy, she's like, I do know when it's time to go, and I don't want to.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do not want to. Like, I am on the like just fully on my knees. Like the imagery of I've been on my knees. So like the been is invoking like it's a consistent thing of being on her knees. So it's every day. It's not just like I got on my knees one time. It's like I'm constantly begging on my knees, which is like that's a lot of labor to be on your knees. Anybody who's ever, I don't know if you've ever got like punished and you had to like be on your knees in the corner or something, or even if you like prayed too long, I guess, like it hurts to be on your knees for a
Mm-hmm.
while. And it's like she's just ignoring the pain because she wants the only thing she's like, what can I sacrifice? I can sacrifice like the pain in my knees. I don't want any of this money I have, and I have a lot of it. Just, just give me somebody. It's
Yeah.
so
Well, and that's also from "It's Time to Go,"
sad.
like 15 years begging on my bleeding knees. Um,
Mhm.
for her, it's supplication. Like you said, it's a painful kind of supplication. Um, she's been on her knees begging for this, begging till her knees bled. A favorite Taylor image, and for her to be asking and praying in good faith for something that just doesn't come, a prayer that just doesn't get answered, is uh, something that she really takes to heart.
Yeah, and I love what you said, Rob, about her like trying to negotiate or like try to, talk to the manager or or invoking that higher power. Like, because in that way she is trying to be active. I know, but in the beginning we said like with Eve, it was she like lost her agency, but here she's trying to regain some of it back. And it's if you know anything about Greek mythology, you know that a prophecy once it's set, it's set. Like there are so many times where like a hero in Greek mythology will hear a prophecy and be like, that's never going to happen. Or I guess anti-heroes or villains even like, like your son will kill you. So you try to kill your son, but then your son gets hidden away on a mountain and they come back and they kill you, right? Like, like this, like it's this Greek tragedy is, it's like trying to, in fact, trying to run from the prophecy can usually make it worse. And
Yep.
so, I think really and having these kinds of images, I think start entering the song just really shows like she really wants to speak to someone, but it also seems very futile, like from our vantage point.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Taylor and Fate and me and Hannah have talked about this, but I said one of the interesting thing Taylor does is she has this like she's actually really fatalistic. And it started happening around Speak Now, where she's like, everything may end in destruction type thing. But she's also super hopeful about it. And I think that's what's making like the prophecy itself is it is like, even though it feels like super despairing, she has some hope because she says she's not a greater woman and she's also not a lesser woman. She can't get rid of her hope, and that's what's putting her on her knees. And I think that's so interesting just for someone who wants her company. Like anybody, please. Oh my God.
All right. Do you want to read the second verse?
Sure. Um, I love the second verse. Cards on a table, mind play out like fools in a fable. Oh, it was sinking in, sinking in. Slow is the quicksand, poison blood from the wound of the pricked hand. Still, I dream of him. Like, there's just so much happening in that little bit. There's so much happening, like, literally each line. There's so much. There's so much.
All right. Start with the first one. Start with cards on the table.
Just from cards on the table, before you hit that second line, my immediate imagery of is playing cards. And I guess that's because I grew up with playing cards. So that she's doing like this double entendre here because to put all your cards on a table means like you're bearing it all, you're showing it all. So she's like showing it all, but then she literally flips the line not even 2 seconds later by saying mine play out like fools in a fable. So she's like she's talking about like tarot cards now, where it's like she went and asked someone and they're like, well, this is not going to go well for you.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be tarot cards. It could just be like, I thought I had a really good hand, like two pair in like
Yeah.
poker or three of a kind, and then you flip it over and you know you've been making bets like, oh, I'm gonna win, and then the other person has like a royal flush, and you're like, oh, well, I shouldn't have gone all in, right? Like, and then she lost the whole pot.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's the, like you said, so much going on in this part.
Mine play out like fools in a fable, which is, I mean, Hannah, what's a fable?
So fable is like I guess the most famous ones are like Aesop's fables where he does like the tortoise and the hare, the ant and the grasshopper, where they're like little stories that have a moral or like a moral and like there's like a moral saying at the end where like the that's not the slow and
Well,
steady will always win the race for the tortoise and the hare, right? So like there's like they usually use animals to like tell you what to do, or the boy who cried wolf, like don't say there's danger or there's not danger because no one's gonna come help you, right? So she's saying that like, oh, like she feels like a character in a story where there is an ending that everyone knows is gonna happen, but she just like didn't see it. Like everyone else saw this coming, the end,
yep,
but she's the fool.
yep. Oh, and it's like her story, and I'm about to say something that is like it's not fully formed, but it is. It is. Hold on, because okay, so fables have like lessons at the end, and Taylor as a storyteller, she's like, this is happening to me because I have to give everybody else the lesson, and I'm always going to be the loser because she's the fool in the fable, but she still has to tell, like, she has to give the lesson. So I think that it's like it's happening to her because she chose to be a storyteller and she's chose to be like she's the one giving us all these lessons in her songs. Oh
But then she doesn't get a happy ending.
no, but
Well,
oh
but the Aesop's fables, it's here's the rules. You follow this rule and you get
mm,
your reward. So you mentioned the ant and the grasshopper, which definitely seems to be one of the fables she has in mind here. It's like, ooh, the ant prepares for winter, and the grasshopper is like, woohoo, I'm just going to hop around. And then winter comes, and the ant has all their food stored up, and the grasshopper doesn't. And the moral is be an ant, not a grasshopper. Except Taylor very much singing in the voice of a character who did all the right things, was responsible, followed the rules, worked hard, played by the rules, and now winter comes and has nothing, and is thinking, I should have been a grasshopper. That sense of having been betrayed by the moral. Or you also mentioned the tortoise and the hare. It's like
mhm.
slow and steady wins the race, and
And she
and
lost it.
yes, and of course, she's always been fascinated by female characters who play by the rules and work hard, expecting to be rewarded for it, and they get passed over. And that's something that she is very, very, very fixated on, stories like that. Like 20 years at your job, and the son of the boss gets the spot that was yours. Um, there's a lot of stories like that in her songs, and this is just a classic case of where she was the one in the fable who knew the moral, and who did did what she was supposed to do, and did everything the right way, and it turned out to be not what she was promised.
Yeah,
Rob, I love
that's
that.
so good. It also like goes along with on the tarot card vision, the fool is the card that represents having faith and new beginnings. And even though you're like inexperienced, you're gonna have like beginner's luck and you believe in the universe. And again, it's like she pulled the fool, but the fool didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And Rob, I love the connection, like the connections you're making from It's Time to Go to this song are crazy. Like we you talked about a little before, but even that one just now about following the rules but having it not work out. Like she's trying to like do this checklist to try to hit every mark in the prophecy, and she has, and then at the end it's like denied, you know?
Yes, yes. And she was, and the way she, like you said, she's asking to see the manager. She's like, "Excuse me, I'm just checking on this prophecy because I did everything the way I was supposed to, and I hit all my developmental milestones on schedule, and I, played by the rules, and I was good in this way, and I was good in that way. So, where is the soulmate that I'm supposed to have arriving on my doorstep any day now?" And I mean, the connections with "It's Time to Go." I mean, I'm fascinated with "It's Time to Go" and "Right Where You Left Me," just the two side by side songs at the end of Evermore.
Yep.
And
Here's where I say it's time to go is so painfully underrated. Me and Hannah
yes,
have had this conversation too.
yes,
More credit for what it's doing.
unbelievable. But the way that those songs are a dialogue over this kind of thing
Mm.
that's happening in the prophecy of, you know, but if I wait faithfully, I will be rewarded for waiting faithfully. I will finally get what I want. And that's not what's happening to her in the prophecy.
Yeah, and
And
that's such an interesting thing because yeah, you're right. Like, um, good girls, long will they? What's the from Sad, Beautiful, Tragic? Um,
Faithful they'll be, long they will wait.
yeah, right. Like, is that not like her being like, okay, got it, check. Granted, later she does say, "Good girls never wait," but that was like a very fun, flirty thing to say. I think her mindset is really like, I'm going to if I do these things, right? Like very type A, older
Yep.
daughter, right? Like, and but then I think this is a perfect segue because then it's sinking in. Now she's like, wait, I did all this stuff, but now this new reality, like I can't avoid it. It is sinking in, right? Like
Yeah.
slowly.
And you have to like the O's in this songs are lyric packed lyrics in themselves. It was sinking in. Oh, like, oh.
Yeah, like a
yeah,
realization.
yeah, they're very pained. She's again, to take a character from another song. She's the student who did all the extra credit, then got graded on a curve. But
Yep.
that's, I mean, when you talk about her being a type A oldest daughter, it's really funny that it's like very stereotypical, like oldest daughter immigrant family is so like her emotional wiring. It's really kind of amazing. And she's like, excuse me, like she's definitely the one who would rather do everything the hard way and do it right, and get credit for that. And that she's that the character in this song is definitely a character that she's visited many times in her songs. And I love how extreme it is in this song, and how just shocked she is that the prophecy has turned out to be not what she bargained for.
Yeah, and then we have this slow as the quicksand. So if you don't know, quicksand isn't actually quick. It just kind of holds you and then you just slowly sink into the ground.
And it's interesting, the more you struggle, the faster you'll go. So,
Yep.
like, for her to say slow as the quicksand, is she didn't even realize she needed to get out and, like, she didn't realize she was in quicksand until she looked down and was like, oh, I'm up to my waist. And now if I fight against it, I'm still gonna drown. And this song's like she's trying to fight against it was no one to pull her out. And she's like sinking even more, you know?
Yeah.
And then she has this pricked hand, and then there's some. So the way that she constructs this little lyric is interesting. So poison blood from the wound of the pricked hand. So there is so that the pricked hand, first of all, reminds me of Sleeping Beauty, where like,
Yes.
she touches the spindle and then the curse happens. Another prophecy, right? The Sleeping Beauty. If you don't
And
know,
tried to take
yeah, it
away.
was this Sleeping Beauty was cursed to on her 16th birthday to die, and then the fairies changed it to just fall asleep. But anyway, like that's the prophecy. And then to try to avoid the prophecy, the king and queen burned all the spinning wheels in all the land. But of course, one remained in the castle's tower or something. And then so on her 16th birthday, she did prick her hand. But in this one, it's just a sleeping, spell. It's poison. And so she is getting dying from the inside out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on Sleeping Beauty though, she even says like she pricks her hand and she does fall into the sleep, but she's dream in her dream, she's dreaming of him, the person that she doesn't want to have to leave.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exquisite, do you want to talk about when you think this song is happening now, or do you want to talk about when you think
oh
it's
my
happening
God.
later?
Okay. Um,
So she
I think this song is like, what did I tell you? I think it's happening like right around my boy only breaks his favorite toys before So Long London, but also inside So Long London, inside the So Long London part, specifically where she is sinking with the ship, she's going down with it. And then she's like, I have to let go of the sinking ship. And not abandon it, but I have to leave it because I'm going down with it. And so, especially with the sinking in part, it's like encapsulated in those moments where she's looking at the wreckage of the ship she's on and she's like, I can't change this prophecy. I have to go.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, so for me when I was looking, because Rob, I have this thing called the TTPD chronological order playlist where I'm just trying to, like, if this were like, obviously, like, we're not this if this were like just a story where I'm trying to just fit the pieces of both the anthology and the standard into just one coherent, like, novel, basically. Like, where would this go? And for a long time I put this near the end, like,
mhm.
obviously, like, before So High School,
Mm.
but like, oh, like, after all this mess and end of relationships, like, I would put this at near the end where she's like hit rock bottom here. But through this stanza, and because of Exquisite's interpretation, like, oh, like, is it possible that this is near the end of like one long relationship where she really thought this was
She was
the
getting the
one,
realization.
and then being
She was
like, and it also could lead to you doing, what does she say in the in summation poem, like, causes,
crashing out.
yeah, it's like to do the strangest things, right? Like when she's manic, to like, right, like, right. And I was like, oh, like, maybe because when you realize the prophecy is not changed, it makes you lash out and, go another
And try
direction.
to take your fate into your own hands.
Yeah, and what is it, out of the oven into the microwave. But I was like, oh, I think that's a really interesting way to see this song too. Is like, you could see it as like a woman literally at rock bottom. There is no further way to go, and you're just on your
On her
knees.
knees at rock bottom.
Or you could see it as this is the last straw of a woman who's like, I thought I did everything right. And uh, I am now just gonna throw everything out the window and do whatever I want because no one is listening to me and maybe nobody cares. And then she jumps off the ship, bolts, and does whatever she wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, you randomly reminded me of Call It What You Want To, just because of the at least I did one thing right. And so this was a person who thought she had her one thing right. And it slowly starts sinking in. Like she goes to the cards for advice and they're like, nope, you gotta leave. And she's like, oh, I have to leave. But I'm still dreaming of him. Like I'm poisoned, like in the poison from the wound of the pricked hand. So like the poison is now leaching out. Like it's bleeding out. And she's still dreaming about not wanting to go. Like she's still dreaming of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Any other thoughts, Rob, about the second verse before we have you read the bridge?
I'm scared of this bridge. What a bridge. This is my not just my favorite part of the song, but I think this is one of the all-time great Taylor moments. She is trying
I
so
agree.
hard to keep her voice again the way she delivers this, she's trying so hard to keep her voice steady. She's trying so hard to sound calm and reasonable, like she's on the phone with the manager after waiting on voicemail for an hour. uh, Please stay on the line. Your call is important to us. We'll be right back in touch with you to talk about your prophecy by the next available operator. And Taylor is on her end of the phone, losing her mind and trying to sound really calm. One of those people who, like, the angrier they get, the harder they work to keep their voice really calm and steady. And in this bridge, she's really doing that with her voice. And I feel like an infant, feeling like the very last drops of an ink pen. A greater woman stays cool, but I howl like a wolf at the moon, and I look unstable, gathered with a coven round a sorceress's table. A greater woman has faith, but even statues crumble if they're made to wait. I'm so afraid I sealed my fate. No sign of soulmates. I'm just a paperweight in shades of greige, spending my last coin so someone will tell me it'll be okay. Please, I've been on
Oh,
my knees. Change the prophecy. Don't want money, just someone who wants my company. Let it once be me. Who do I have to speak to about if they can redo the prophecy?
ah, ah.
No, yeah,
No.
no, this is one of those, like, they on Twitter they have like those things like the Golden Gate Bridge and like the other, and then like the Taylor Swift Bridge, like these are the greatest bridges in the world. Like this
Yeah,
this is one of the greatest bridges in the world.
this is
Ah.
this. If you'll forgive the New York reference, this is the Verrazano Bridge among her bridges. Um, the one between Staten Island and Brooklyn. It's like it's absolutely insane that she's throwing out all these different metaphors in every line, but the way that she declaims it as it just gets darker and heavier as she goes on while keeping her voice very steady. But the way that she realizes like how distraught she is that she has been the greater woman. She has tried to be the one who has faith, the one who stays cool, the one who does everything right. And she's not getting what she thought she was bargaining for.
Yeah, and some of these rhymes or slant rhymes that she has is crazy,
Uh,
like infant, ink pen,
yeah.
uh, cool, moon, and stable, unstable table, faith, weight, fate, soulmates, paperweight, and grage. So that's just wild. Like I do think
It's
that the rhyming is both the imperfect rhyming, I think, really adds to kind of the unstableness of her mind, where like she is just doing this stream of consciousness, trying to just make things make sense. Not everything's perfect, but obviously the way she sings them, it does work, but it's very much like
she's forcing it to work, and that's the
yes,
problem. Because we talked about this in LOML, where she was trying to force married to rhyme with everything else, but it didn't until she added in barely. And I can't remember what was the switch from to getting married to something else. Um, and it wasn't working. So I love when Taylor does a slant rhyme or a forced rhyme because that's usually her being like, I have to take control. Like she is like her writer's pen is trying to take control of the prophecy of how words rhyme, and it doesn't work, but it works, but it doesn't it won't work for long. Oh, it's so good.
yeah.
It's so
So
good.
so she sounds like an infant, like a baby. So she's like helpless again, then no agency.
Fine.
Infants only cry, right? Like and whine and very, like she's feeling like she's at the end of her rope. The very If you guys know, if you ever get to the end of a pen, I never do, I always lose my pens, right? But then by the end, like you're trying to scratch out some words, but it's just very, you just see the pen imprint on the paper, right? Like
Oh,
she's literally down to her last bit of strength. A greater woman stays cool, but she literally howls like a wolf at the moon. And then at the end, she does howl like the ooh,
she
Yes.
ooh.
started
Yeah.
howling.
The
And I'm just
howling is
like,
intense.
yeah, you're just like, oh my gosh, she's like, I will show you how I howled. Like, um, uh,
Getting to the
The
song,
the
Valley of
drops
the
out of yes. Also, the drops out of an ink pen, they remind me of her her quill pen. This is a very quill song, and how she smashed it when she was angry. And I that totally sounds like that's what she's doing here.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Even the way
also,
she sings these lines, it
I
just,
know.
that the way she howls like a wolf of the moon, and as you said, the way she sings that line so steadily when she sings it, and then within a minute she actually is howling at the moon. It's just incredible.
I also really love the that feeling like the very last drops of an ink pen, because I don't know, when I get so frustrated if I'm on my very last pen. It's the only pen I have in my purse, and I have to write something and it's not coming out, and I just start like going over the line over and over again until something comes out. And it's so frustrating and maddening. And I get so angry because I'm like, why don't I have another pen? So just in that line, like that line encapsulates so much frustration and anger and exhaustion, just in like, wow, especially after coming up. I feel like an infant, helpless and crying and upset and frustrated. And why is no one coming to me? Because babies can't communicate, so they cry, and they cry until someone goes to them and finds out what's wrong, but no one's coming to her.
Yeah.
Who's gonna help?
I mean, so she does have her coven round a sorceress's table, right? I mean that obviously I was like, oh, that looks like Willow, right? Where she has her little people in her little cloaks and they have the little golden spheres. But yeah, like we have this idea that so it does to me eventually she does have some friends trying to comfort her or maybe cast a spell or
Help her.
something.
It's not work. They're trying to give her advice. Someone told me nothing's there's nothing wrong with only your actions talk, right? She's got people giving her advice. I don't know if she wants to listen to some of the advice, but she's got it. It's maybe
Yeah.
not help.
But she's the one that looks like not okay. Like she's with her friends, but she's the one that looks unstable, as she says. Like she's
Mhm.
um and then this next line is the one that was at the Spotify pop-up in LA. Greater Woman Has Faith, but even statues crumble if they're made to wait. And I remember when that hit the timeline, everyone was like, "Oh, like we know what this one's about like," and it's such a cool metaphor, right? Like because like a statue you expect just lasts forever. Like in our museums, we have like Roman, Greek statues that, but even they over time will crumble. Um, and the fact that she feels like she's a statue, that she is frozen in a position and just has to hold it until something happens. But she's like, yeah, I will crumble. And that goes back to the whole like girls, the sad, beautiful, tragic line we said earlier about how long they'll wait, but eventually they'll crumble.
Yeah.
And blow away in the wind. Oh, that line. And then again, I'm not joking. After that line where she goes, the performance of "I'm so afraid, I've sealed my fate, no sign of soulmates." It's like her voice is just, it's like given out. Like she's struggling. She's trying to get it out there, but she's doing it on purpose. And like the performance of that whole like section, again, I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and that part of the song. Like I'm like in it with her, and I'm also afraid. Like, oh my goodness, I've sealed my fate. Like and especially because it's like this is the part of the song where there's agency in this line. I sealed, so I actively did something that caused me to no longer, like, no sign of soulmates. I am just nothing but a paperweight. A
I will
great
say,
state.
gray shades of gray. Is it grayish or gray?
Rage.
It's the first time I'd ever heard like this word. Like usually I'm like very proud to be like, oh, I knew all the Taylor Dictionary words, but this is the one I had to look up. It's like gray and beige mixed together. It's used in a lot of like homes that you flip because it's very neutral and no one's gonna be mad about a gray beige wall versus like some kind of yellow or like magenta. So she's just, but yeah, she's now gone from a statue, which at least is beautiful and, has these beautiful, intricate carvings, to just being a paperweight, just like a stone that's no one cares
No
about.
colors in her face. Just she
That
can't
is,
even be black and white. She's gray for it.
Yes. Not a snow globe paperweight,
No,
just like a grayish one. Yeah, I
that's,
never heard of that color before either.
yeah,
I thought, is she just making up colors here?
she could
Wouldn't
have, right?
wouldn't put it past her.
Yeah, yeah. Just maybe she was watching a lot of HGTV or something.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Um, and then this really powerful line at the end, spending my last coin, so someone will tell me it'll be okay. So I've heard lots of theories about this. Exquisite, I'm gonna let you collect yourself. Right. I've seen this be like Exquisite said earlier, like someone like you spending your last few coins on like a palm reader or a tarot card reader, being like, I need like so desperate that you want to know your future. I've also seen this be like a reference to like, is it like therapy, right? Talking to somebody like professionally. And obviously she's well, this character is like so desperate looking for help. Or in some other way, maybe even like at a drink at a bar, right? Like I'm just gonna the bartender can even tell me it'll be okay, right? Just the fact that either she's not listening to anyone who is telling it to her for free, like her friends or family, or everyone in her life is saying bad things, and she's like, I just need someone to tell me something positive. Either
Like,
way,
give me a second opinion.
yeah.
If someone will say something positive, I'm gonna take it. Like, that's how bad it is. And for some reason, I just randomly I remembered that Bible verse that is like, it's easier for a camel to fit through an idle needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. And I'm thinking about how she even says, I don't want money. And then it comes back with her. She's like, I will give all of my money, my last coin, just for it to be okay and for someone to want my company. Ugh,
Yeah,
just
because
full supplication at that point.
yeah, it's very much a supplication, like very much like a, uh, I, I am willing to give up everything, right? Like to change the prophecy, right? Like, yeah, like going back to the
Yeah.
negotiation metaphor, like I will give up all this money, just change the prophecy. That is
Not even
like,
for it to be good, for it to be okay. Like, not great, not fantastic. Okay is so, like, it is and it is like, I don't want to say the words pathetic, but it is like when you just want the just even a little bit, just okay. Just like, because she also does this pathetic little please at the end, and I say pathetic like not derogatory, but it's like so broken
Yeah.
and like just downtrodden, that she's just like, if you'll tell me if it'll be okay, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, it'll be okay, I'll be fine. It's like that. Like, she's so desperate for anything even slightly good. It makes me so upset.
Yeah. It, I I also hear this line as a fortune teller, and that she's just pumping more money into the fortune teller's hat until she gets the prophecy that she wants. And it reminds me of a Joni Mitchell song that Taylor absolutely for sure knows and loves. "Song for Sharon" on the Hajira album, where Joni Mitchell has that great famous classic line about going to see the fortune teller. There's a gypsy down on Bleecker Street. I went to see her as a kind of joke, and she lit a candle for my love life, and $18 went up in smoke. And
Oh,
I think
God.
of that, and when I hear this line, it's very much that sort of, I keep giving the fortune teller money. Why haven't I gotten the right fortune yet?
Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah. Also, it just made me I had another thought that is like, when you are doing that and just going to anybody and just sending anything, like spending anything, that's how you become susceptible to snake oil salesmen. And that's how you were like, you're opening yourself up for anything to injure you and be negative to your health because you're so desperate. It's like, that's how you get in those situations.
oh, yeah, no. And I'm really glad, Rob, you read the chorus again because I did want to talk about this. Like this pleading aspect that she has throughout this song is so highlighted in the chorus. So like, please, right? That E of I've been on my knees, change the prophecy, don't want money, just someone who wants my company, let it once be me. And then she kind of switches, who do I have to speak to? Oh, and about if they can redo, and it goes to the first line, redo the prophecy. And so the whole song is this plea, this cry for yeah, someone to finally listen to her and tell her it'll be even the bare minimum of it'll be okay. And so yeah, I think that's another reason why this song is so powerful and also why I probably memorized this song so quickly is
I
because
did. It was one of the first ones that I knew all the lyrics to.
I'm glad I'm not alone. All right,
Well,
and then
Yeah.
and it,
go ahead.
just that image of her, like begging on her knees. It's funny that that's something that, she's just very drawn. She sings about knees a lot more than the average songwriter does. She has ever since, the debut album and Mary song, like and that she's very fond of characters who are often begging her on their knees, like in White Horse, um, or Don't Blame Me, where she's begging on her knees, um, for him to stay, or This Love. She's just very fond of knees, and for her to be in this song, just begging and pleading for an answer that just doesn't come.
Yeah, yeah. I used the lyrics finder. So yeah, so the lines that Rob is talking about is like in Mary's song, you looked at me, got down on one knee, take me back to the time we walked down the aisle. In White Horse, there you are on your knees, begging for forgiveness. In This Love, it says, I fell to your smile, my ghost. I fell to my knees. Don't blame me if you'd walk away. I'd beg you on my knees to stay. And then there's actually another one I saw was would have, could have, should have. I if you never, I would have stayed on my knees, and I damn sure never would have danced with the devil. And so yeah, she is. Yeah, this is this, but it's also like such a good image, right? Like we've seen them in movies, right? You've read about them in books. You see it in churches or in houses of worship. Like being on your knees is such a vulnerable state, right? You when you get down on your knees to propose to somebody, right? Like it's um and so yeah, it's a very humbling position to be in. And she is what's humble is like always the word humble always reminds me of Charlotte's Web because of the way that Charlotte the Spider like described it. It means like to be near the ground, right? And she's like literally like on the floor. She is like as close like on like full body prostration. Like,
Mhm.
please.
Ugh. Especially because, and then the way she does it at the very end lines where she like goes back, she does this classic Taylor thing where she like takes her beginning and makes it her end, which I always love what she does. But when she does it this time and she goes back to like hand on the throttle, thought I caught lightning in a bottle, underneath it is just her saying please. Underneath that whole like last final verse is the begging, and it's like, oh my god, oh my god.
And she like
Ugh.
sings it a little differently too, right? Like
Yeah.
um and then it ends with that please. It is
Fading into the background, so it's still going.
and and I feel like she sings that whole verse because it's like she's restarting her prayer, right?
Mm,
Like it's like
back to the top.
it's like saying your rosaries, but it's like she sings this song like 13 times, maybe 1300 times to hopefully get someone to finally hear her call.
Yeah, oh my God. And then like one of the things I love about this song so much is one of the things that Taylor does so well, and probably one of the reasons she is so good at what she does is that she does this thing where she takes such specific topics to herself and makes them so like universal that the prophecy for anyone listening, it can be anything. I've seen people who are like my infertility journey or like just trying to get a job or trying to get into school, trying to do anything, um trying not to lose something, and just is when you get to that point of just utter like begging because there's nothing else you can do, that it becomes so universal. Like it's not just love that I want, it's like, can I please get out of the situation I'm in, which I think is very interesting.
As Halsey would say, if she can't have love, she wants power.
Yeah, literally.
Right? But she
Yeah,
gets neither. Yes.
she doesn't get either. I know this song hit Halsey in the chest this like, oh, I know it hit her.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk. We'll pull out a little bit from just the macro of the micro of the song lyrics into kind of like the macro of like this song. I mean, obviously it's been one that people have really latched onto both because of the brilliance of the writing, but also I think it does speak a lot to our personal lives, but also to Taylor's discography, as a whole. I mean, you talked, Rob, connecting it to It's Time to Go. And yeah, those parallels are like super there. Are there other songs that you feel like um this connects to and you're like, oh, like this is like a pipeline, this is like how else she's played with this kind of topic before? We've touched on a couple songs, but I'd love to hear all of our thoughts on that.
Really connects to 15 for me. Um, Despite them being about these two narrators at very different points in their life. Excuse me. But I think of this as, the character from 15 as an adult, and that sense of, like waiting to get your due, and doing things right so that you're living your life and that you're in control of your life and that it's authentically your life, and to find yourself as the narrator of the prophecy does, that all your best efforts and all your loyal, faithful waiting has not brought you what you expected from life, and what you thought of as yours.
Well, that's really sad, Rob. I was
It's a set.
What?
I'm sorry. I'll find a more upbeat interpretation of this song.
No, you
no,
know,
no, no.
but I do agree that it's like, I don't know. We've talked about Taylor being like she's the one who plays by the rules. Um, and even in her Reputation time where she's like, well, I don't have to play by the rules anymore. She was still playing by the rules because again, I'm thinking of Call It What You Want. And she's like, I'm breaking all the rules and being um, like hiding myself away or whatever. But I did one thing right, and that was finding you. So she was still playing by the rules. She got her reward, like pulling back. The rules changed and she changed with it after 1989's Reputation to Lover. And I think that lets us know like Taylor in her mind state again, she's always, and I think she says this in her documentary Miss Americana, where she's like she's always wanted to be the good girl, the one that people like applauded for, that they praise her. She never wanted to do anything wrong. She wanted very desperately to be liked by everyone. And the prophecy really does like encapsulate that in her. And also like you can see it in so many songs from the beginning. I'm thinking The Outside, I think, where she's like, how can I ever try to get better if nobody ever lets me in? It's like,
Wow, what a great connection. I love that.
oh, it's like, oh, Taylor. She's been like this since she was like 13 years old.
I
Some of
know, poor thing. Yes.
I mean, Exquisite, you talked to me before about the connection to Love Story, right?
Yep. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Love Story is also like because Romeo and Juliet doomed romance and she changes it. She changes that prophecy in her own song. So it's like again, I think and I feel like I said this earlier, Taylor as a writer is like, and I feel like writers or people who are creative are susceptible to being like, if I am talented enough, I can change the way things are going to look. Like if I submit to my imaginings, Taylor has a lot of songs where she imagines like great loves. Love Story, I think, was made up for her as well. I think she was mad at her parents about something when she wrote that. And then you have like Stay, 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 which was made up. Mine, which was made up. And in Mine and Stay, 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 there's like a rough patch, but the person that she wants to love her comes after her. She doesn't have to beg them. Like they come in and talk to her after she like throws a phone, or they run into the street after her
We
and
love
being like,
that.
Boy,
exactly.
We
does she
love
love that. There's nothing she loves more than storming out of a restaurant and being followed and being chased, and maybe having pebbles thrown.
Her thinking she wants you to like, she's like, oh my God, I left that apartment in the middle of the night and you ran after me. You showed your hand. You showed your hand, led me back to that apartment. And here we have she's showing her hand for cards on the table. She's like, usually it should work. In the stories, it should work if I show my hand. And it's like, well, no, you're a fool. This is a fable now. This is not how it works. It's not like the stories. And it's just like, wow. Again, that like fatalistic optimism she got going on. It does her head in.
Yeah, to me, this song reminds me a lot about how Taylor sings so much about like fate and about, right? Because if you believe in fate, then you have to believe in prophecy, right? You have to, they kind of go hand in hand where, right? I mean, if you just look up the word fate in her discography, right? There's from Long Live, God forbid fate should, step in, or Story of Us since the twist of fate when it all broke down. These
Mhm.
are the hands of fate, every night that summer just to seal my fate in Lover, right? Like Mastermind, Once Upon a Time, the planets and the fates all align. Like it's this even invisible string. Like that whole song is like, like there's this invisible thing that's connecting us. And so for her, like that's the flip side, right? Like if it all works out, if believing in fate is like the best, most romantic thing ever, but on the flip side, if it doesn't work out, then what if fate has actually doomed me and cursed me to
Yeah.
be alone, right?
Yep.
Like, and which is like so devastating for someone who is such a romantic and wants these beautiful things. Um,
Yep.
and
It's that devastation of how did it end with the, oh, it's happening again. Because it's always going to happen. At least for in the mind state she was when she was writing those two songs of like, well, come on, it's happening again because I'm fated to always have to come up here and tell y'all that I gave all my heart and love and hopes into this situation and it didn't turn out right. And I admire her because I don't think she's ever been embarrassed to do it. And I think that shocks a lot of people. And I think the thing about Tortured Poets Department is people expected Taylor to bury things, and that's never been her go-to. Like they expected her to not address things, I should say. Like she was in a better place before Tortured Poets Department came out, where it's like, oh, maybe we don't need to talk about the Matthew of it all. We don't need to talk about any of that. And she's like, well, actually, we're going to do it because I'm not embarrassed that it happened. And I need to share why and how and be as open and honest. And of course, that led to quite a lot of discomfort that I think it was hard for people to unpack, especially in those first, like that first week of it being out. Release week, everybody was struggling with handling just how open and honest she was willing to be and how vulnerable. And the prophecy is that vulnerability on display. Who wants to show the world how pathetic they can be when they're begging for, like, it is pathetic. You don't want somebody to see you on your knees, tear streaked face, probably snotting up. It's ugly, it's not pretty. And Taylor's like, no, I'm going to bear it all. Like, you're going to see this.
you're literally going to hear me howling in a song.
Yes.
And it's what makes her so great. Like, she doesn't, it's not, she cares so much that she can't not show it. Like, she's going to unveil it.
I mean, Rob, I know you got the actual album early, the standard, to review, but
Yeah.
you did not get the extra tracks. Did you get them at the same time we got them?
Yes.
Oh my
So,
God.
so, so, so you had half the album processed, but this second half with songs like "How Did It End" and "The Prophecy," like how as a reviewer, like how did that
Yeah, how
work?
did it recontextualize things for you?
Well, I mean, as a reviewer, I had a few days with the first half of the album, and it went live at midnight, and my review went live at midnight, and then 2 hours later, there was twice as much of the album, and so I was like, well, I I'd been up for many hours at that point, but I was like, well, I guess I'm putting on a pot of coffee and listening to some more Taylor songs and staying up all night with them. And I actually sent messages to my editors. I said, I know you're sound asleep right now. I hope you're sound asleep. I hope you're just getting this in the morning. But Taylor, being completely insane, released another album tonight at 2 a.m. So I'm just staying up and writing about it. And so these songs they're very late night songs. It's very much like as with the Midnight's 3 a.m. version. This time she couldn't even wait 3 hours. It had to be 2 a.m. They're very late night songs. They're very Aaron songs. They're very hushed. A song like this is just very, um, very powerful. It's a song that really needs to be heard at 2 a.m. to be really understood. It's it's definitely it's my favorite from the anthology. I'm somebody who likes the anthology songs even better than the first half. Although both halves are just full of songs I love, but this song is just something so new for her. It a song it really, really, really reminds me of is The Archer, which is a song that is another song about, you know, this the realization sinking in or the fear sinking in that you're cursed to this fate and that everybody knows it but you, and that the archer is basically the last one to realize that all of her heroes die all alone and all of her enemies end up as friends, and she sings that like she's just revealing this big secret. You know something about me? My enemies started out as friends, and she seriously thinks nobody has ever mentioned that before. She thinks that this is something that people don't notice, and that feeling that you described, charisma, of just the sort of the the humiliation of like having your secrets that are public and seen, and that you don't want to be seen like begging on your knees. That's something that is very um very prevalent in the archer and very prevalent in this one too, even though it's a very quiet and hushed song.
I love that connection to the Archer, which, as you may or may not know, it is the track 5 on the Lover album. Track 5 tends to be the most vulnerable of the Taylor Swift songs. Not necessarily sad, but very expressive of vulnerable parts of who Taylor is. In that song, it's, yeah, that I've been the archer, I've been the prey, screaming, who could ever leave me, darling, but who could stay? And the bridge of like, they see right through me. Can you see right through me? I see right through me.
That whole
Um,
bridge without taking a breath. Oh my God. Like, and it just keeps building. Why would she say any of that? I feel the same way about the prophecy. Oh my God, why would she say this? Why would you say any of this? A, a different artist, a lesser artist would never put this song out. They would never say any of that.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
is such a exquisite. You made such a great point about her pride and about like how that feeling like she really creates these narrators who hate that these secrets are out there and hate being
Yeah.
seen in their miserable and vulnerable moments. It's really it she's just very, very drawn to creating these characters who really, it wouldn't be so bad if they could just keep all this misery private, but that it's so visible is so
Like, let those secrets go gently into the good night.
yeah.
But Taylor, as a writer, she would not be who she is if she ever did that. Like, and I think that's why she gets so much. People interact with Taylor in such a weird way because of that, because she's gonna tell them exactly what happened.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I do feel like, Rob, like that's part of, oh, this is a good segue for your book, right? Like you do talk about how Taylor Swift changes pop music, right? And I did some research for this, is I found your AMA that you did on Reddit
Oh yeah.
about like and why, I think someone asked like what you I'm just scrolling down. Yeah, so if you guys Google it, I'll put it in the show notes too. He did a AMA on Reddit about his book and things like that. And there's a lot of really good questions about like, how he reviews albums and things like that. But I think someone asked you like, what makes her so um special. And I definitely don't want to give away the book, but do you want to share a little bit about like what do you mean when you say like how Taylor Swift changed pop music?
Well, like, you can go ahead and spoil because if I answered that question at that particular AMA in a way that you
Oh,
liked,
that's true.
I'd like
No,
to hear that.
okay. I'm just scrolling, but let's see. What did you write? You wrote, I think you wrote something like, hold on. I know I screenshotted it because I thought it was so good that that honestly, that's probably I'm gonna play. But it was basically like how she talks about how, the way she writes and how confessional it is has literally changed how we look at pop music today and how pop stars come out today to talk about how to write about their songs and how people really emulate that. Exquisite, do you remember? I sent it to you, right?
Yeah, yeah, I found it. It's she has taken a young girl singing her own songs about her own life and made it the center of pop music. In terms of girls singing about girls to other girls, she made that not the main thing that pop music is, not a genre. Um, she made that the main thing that pop music is, not a genre, not a fad, not a style. Now that's just what pop music is. So I love
Yeah,
that as
totally.
well.
I mean, like in the days of Fearless, when because just because Exquisite, you were talking about Love Story before, but
Mhm.
that she was almost a novelty. It's like, oh wow, here's a young girl with a guitar who's writing songs about her own life. That was almost like her angle or something. It was almost like,
Yeah.
wow. It was like, look, she can actually do
Oh,
this.
she can do
Yes.
that.
Yes, exactly. It was like, this is a dog that can juggle or something like that. It was presented almost as like a novelty, and you look at it these years later, and that's just what pop music is. That if you look at what's popular in 2024, it's you know other women songwriters who have taken the language that she invented and the doors that she's opened and done their own thing with it. So it's just
Exactly.
amazing to see.
And it's
I think
and
she's
they're
doing an
good. This is great music coming out too.
Yeah, this is one of the best years to be a pop music fan that
yeah.
has ever
Oh my
existed in
God.
history.
This
And
year.
I've been a pop music fan for a very long time, since long before either of you were alive. Um, I've been a pop fan since ABBA were all still married. Like since Fleetwood Mac were all still married. Um, it's just a thing where the radio now is so full of these voices, and they're not imitating Taylor, right? None of them sound like her. None of them sound like each other. They're all very different artists. Anybody in 5 seconds can hear the difference between a Chapel and a Sabrina, or a Billy and Olivia, or you know Tinashe, or Miley, or all the people who are sort of finding their voices on the radio on this level, and yet they all sound different from Taylor. None of them sound like her, but they're all using the sort of the innovations that she created, and going through the doors that she opened. And
I would even, yeah, no, I would even say, and this is a hot take. Do not try me at the stake because I'm just thinking of like people listening to this. But I will even say that artists who like if you look over in the like the R&B spirit before, and I think about this a lot, before writing like being from the heart and being like sincere and as like authentic was typically reserved for rappers. And this is where Taylor is Tupac's daughter, but that's neither here nor there. Because in rap, like having a ghostwriter and having someone write your music for you was a bad thing because in rap, like you're supposed to be like rapping about your own situations in your life. So if it came out that you had a ghostwriter, it's like nobody's going to look at you the same way. And then if you look at with like pop music and R&B, you have writers who are doing that, and R&B is like we're talking about how they're going to perform this, right? So then when Taylor is like, I remember she turned down that first record deal she got because they didn't want her to write her own music. And she's like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have to write my music. And now I'm thinking about how, like, even Beyonce now, like, her thing was she was the performance. She was not going to write it. But if you look at, like, Cowboy Carter, and like 16 carriages where she's the writer and she's like actually talking about things she experienced it and now people are like connecting with that song. It's like it's no longer just the performance. It's like how are you reflecting your experiences in the songs. I think it's just so interesting and cool. And it's like not wrong to say that Beyonce has taken cues from Taylor. And I just think that's again, yeah, no, like nobody was doing that. And I think some pop stars should put the pen down and they should let other people write for them because I'm sorry. This is not like a bad thing. I think some people should let other people write for them because they are not good at it yet or they don't know how to do it yet. So it's okay to have other people write for you. But the feeling that they need to write their own music does come from Taylor. So she's like put pressure on everyone to be like these are my experiences. It's like, well, for you, we don't need that. We don't need that from
Yeah,
you.
yeah. She the the things that's I mean that's such a great point. She made it to where writing your own songs was something that you just had to do. It was you know it was really bush league not to aim that high.
Yeah, I mean,
You gotta realize she's an overachiever. You don't gotta achieve like she does.
Totally.
yeah,
And she's coming into a pop world where, there's this incredibly long tradition of teenage pop girls who become stars singing songs that men have written for them.
Mhm.
And for her to completely smash that paradigm, I mean, that's just not happening now. Um, as you said, she raised the bar to the point where nobody would take a singer seriously on that level if they couldn't hack it as a songwriter. They just they're not playing in the big leagues anymore, and it really is amazing that like that long and often the very long fight of teenage pop girls to be allowed to write their own songs. Just Taylor completely changed that paradigm.
yeah, that is such a big change. And yeah, some of my favorite releases this year have been girls who picked up a guitar, right? And wrote about their feelings um and that has made my life so much better because I get to hear so many voices and so many experiences. Yeah, is there and yeah, Rob, why don't you give us, since we're talking a little bit about your book, like, what do you want to give us a little bit about, like, I don't know. You can share whatever story, whatever anecdote you want to, practice
Yeah.
saying in front of a crowd. We can be your test audience. But yeah, maybe
Platform.
like how you got. I mean, I will say most of your books that you've written that are about artists, the artists had the band had broken up or they had passed away, and so this is your first time doing a book on a continuing to put out music artist. I mean,
Yeah.
so
And
how
such
did it
a
come to
respect
how did the project come
capability.
just
together?
just very different because she just keeps doing stuff. All the stories keep changing. Every time I think I've got a Taylor topic absolutely nailed, she changes the story. And that's just the kind of artist she is. I mean, I've been writing about her entire career, so I'm very used to the thing where you come up and you think I've solved this part of the Taylor mystery, and then it changes. So there was one part in the book where I'm writing about her very long running relationship with Stevie Nicks, such an interesting part of her career, both in terms of her engaging with Stevie personally, but also with that music. And it's funny that I sent this to my editor on a Thursday, and I remember that because I was like, okay, this is good, this is finished, this is definitive. And then that Saturday, Stevie went to the Eras tour in Dublin, and Taylor gave this big speech about how Stevie had completely changed music, allowing female artists like Taylor to exist, and that they all happened because of Stevie. And I said, unbelievable. Everything changes in the story after writing about it. And the book I wrote before the Beatles was about David Bowie, and he had passed away. Um, it's just the kind of artist that Taylor is not going to let any part of the mystery get solved. Right? She's always going to keep deepening it and extending it. And I mean, honestly, the fact that she wrote her own songs in the beginning was always such a shock. The very first time I heard Taylor, I had never heard of her. I heard Our Song. That was the one that made me into a fan. And I wasn't even listening. I just, I had music on the next room. I was making a grilled cheese sandwich and I heard Our Song and I could not believe how great it was. And I was more curious about the songwriter than the singer. And it was such a shock when I looked it up and the songwriter was also the singer, because that just didn't happen in country music at that point in time. It was very rare in pop music at the time. And even weirder, this was an artist who was just a teenager and she had the clout to be writing her own hits as a country star. Like that
Just
just didn't
amazing.
happen. And it certainly wouldn't happen for a teenage girl who's just coming out who'd never made a record before. And it was so strange. And I thought, well, I hope maybe she has some other hits. And it turned out she's had quite a few of them since then. Um, but for me, Our Song, which, and I was thinking about this on Friday night when she was doing Our Song, uh, in New Orleans, that it was a manifesto right from the very beginning, right? It's a mission
Yeah.
statement. She's saying, yes, I'm I'm a teenage girl. I love pop music, and I've heard every song there is. I just love how she casually says, I've heard every song. I've heard every album. I've listened to every song that's ever existed. I know them all. I'm a walking encyclopedia of pop music. And you know what? Like, there just isn't a song that does justice to how I feel, to how girls like me feel, to our hopes, our dreams, our memories, our experiences. So I'm just going to have to write it myself. And the song ends with her just, taking her guitar up to her room and writing her song. And I just thought,
Oh,
what a perfectly structured song. And
he's
it's
got
really amazing that
chills.
I know. And that's like her origin story, her superhero origin story, right? That's her radioactive spider bite, She she writes our song, and she spent her whole career writing our song over and over again. She's writing her song, which is also our song. And in so many ways, she's been writing this same song for the past 20 years. Not that she repeats herself, but that she's always stayed true to the ideal behind our song, which is I'm just going to write a song that does justice to these feelings and these hopes and these dreams.
And this is why you're a writer,
So good.
Rob Sheffield.
That was so good. Oh,
I
I just got
also
chills.
I also got chills.
Oh, but
You could have called this book Our Song as well. I feel like that could, you know what I mean? Like the
yes.
many manifestations of our song. I don't know. That's a terrible title.
And
But
this is why when debut TV comes out, look, because I feel like debut gets so overlooked in her. Every other album is charting and not debut. And I don't know why. I think it's because it was first and because Fearless came out and just
was a monster.
splat everywhere that people just overlook what she was doing on her very first album. And like you were saying with Our Song, where she's literally like, I grabbed a pen and a note and napkin and wrote down our song. And then she just proceeded to do it. And like she had an ear for melody. She knew what she was doing, constructing like the chords. And I'm very excited for debut TV to come out because I wonder just how interesting it's going to be for a 34-year-old Taylor to pick out the songs she wrote when she was 13, 14, and 15 and be like, well, these are the songs I feel like help. Because what are the one of the boons of having the re-recordings, which is like, I wish it never happened to her, but I'm so happy that we get this out of it happening, because we get to recontextualize so much. Like 1989, a perfect pop album, but I remember a lot of conversation about how it's like it was different for her because in making a perfect pop album, she wasn't as like emotionally connected, or she wasn't as like a lot of her lyrics were they were just this different, like they weren't as vulnerable, even though a lot of them were. But that was the thing, like coming off right going to 1989, she was like restraining herself. And then with 1989 TV, with the bonus tracks, we got a lot. Like, first of all, Is It Over Now, where she's like, yeah, everyone was fucking around, but you weren't with me and I'm upset about it. Like, you dream of my mouth before it called you a lying traitor. Like, she just recontextualized 1989, where she's like, yeah, we've been going back and forth. And like, you already had that sense, but then you didn't before. Or like the things she held back from Red, where she was like, even though Red was all over the place, it could have been even more all over the place. And she's finally giving us those like missing pieces. So it's like, it's been so interesting to see that of and seeing how Taylor is a self editor and how she self edits and things that she doesn't think is like not necessarily good enough, but just shouldn't be a part of the narrative at the time. I'm thinking like Speak Now, Foolish One, in connection to the prophecy, is kind of the same thing. Like, even as like at 19 writing Foolish One, where she's like, it's never gonna be you, so stop. Like, she is so like, that song is so like desperate of being like please, I want you to love me so bad, but I know you've got somebody else. And now I'm just sliding down the walls with my head in my hands. And she didn't want that on Speak Now before, but now she's giving it to us. Like, it's such a boon to be able to like recontextualize all these things about Taylor, and how like she even takes that and writes Midnights, where she recontextualizes even more, where she's like, would have, could have, should have. Actually, I'm not okay. Like I said, I was in Dear John. I'm not over this. And
Yeah.
she just, it's so cool to follow her as a writer, as she like people say living text and people don't realize what that means a lot, but Taylor's like discography is a living text that she's constantly like reevaluating and giving us more pieces. And I just think that is so neat and so interesting.
It makes it so fun to listen to, and I'm gonna guess, Rob, for in your book, it must be so fun to be able to start connecting, like, right, like the objects in Taylor's universe, right? From the scarves to the blue dress on a boat to, all these things, right? And it just adding to the yeah, like yeah, like how fun is it for you? It's because you are, I would say you are fully immersed, a huge fan. So how fun is it for you to like have to pull these pieces together, like from 18 years into like a chapter or a series of chapters? Like how fun was that for you?
Well, super fun, but also, I mean, and partly because she's trained us to listen this way, right? She's trained us to listen to details the way she's always listened to pop music. And so much of what I try to capture in this book is what a fan she is, what a geek she is, how tied into music history she is, and how even before she began writing songs, she had studied everybody who ever wrote great songs and wanted to copy all their tricks of how they did it. um, she really wasn't kidding in our song where she said, I've listened to the radio, I've heard every song, she'd studied everybody, and that comes out so often in the ways that she has trained all of us to listen to music on the level that she does in terms of like listening for those details. So something, so all these things that she might mention something in one song and then come back to it, like 12, 13, 14, 15 years later and just pick up on that little detail again. Um, One I love that Hannah, I think you mentioned this as well. The in the snide remarks from my father about your tattoos in ours and how ours sneaks up again like all these years later in the tortured poets department where you're a tattooed golden retriever. And you know, that's something I love about her songwriting is that all this stuff, something that's just mentioned once, it can always return again to be the subject of a song. It can return again to be a tiny detail in the song, but it can also blow up into a whole new song.
Yeah, no, the one I always remember that you did, Rob, was the marvelous, right,
Yeah.
connection in Starlight, and also and then to this the Glass Great American Dynasty, and how she just saves that word for like New England rich people.
Yes. I just love that. And it's something I love about the way she approaches the song is you don't have to pick up on the detail to love those songs. You can love both those songs without noticing that tiny little clever invisible string between them. But they're designed so if you do pick up on that detail, it enhances both songs. And there's so much of that going on in her writing. One that really like hits home for me is there's two songs that she's written where little kids are playing pirates, right? And
Yes.
one is The Best Day and one is Seven, 12 years later. And Seven, it's she's playing pirates with her brother because it's a perfect little happy household. It's the happy family. The kids are so loved. It's it's a beautiful idyllic image from a perfect storybook fairy tale childhood. Their kids are just playing pirates. And then 12 years later, it's Seven. It's another childhood scene. It's a very different kind of house, a very different kind of family. And she and a friend are playing pirates. And they wish they could run away to be pirates. And there's a sense of this detail showing up again for a very different kid who's having a very different, very miserable kind of childhood, and in a very different kind of household. And again, you can love both of those songs without picking up on that connection between them. But the way she just plants the line of pirates into both those songs, again, an invisible string connecting these songs that if you do pick up on it, it enhances both songs. And the way that she has done this so consistently over her career, I'm sorry, but it does make you wonder, does she do these things so she can pick up on them 12 years later? Did when she was when she was
She's got a
writing,
scare him.
yes, when she was writing The Best Day in 2008, does she think, I better come back to this pirates image, later when I'm in my 30s and I'm looking back on a childhood on a childhood friend who was having a very, very different kind of miserable childhood in a very miserable family. And she has trained us to where we kind of wonder if she's planning this entire songbook as she goes.
Will I
Not just,
always wonder? The answer is yes.
yes, exactly. Exactly. The answer is
I,
always yes.
I do. I love when she does that. One of my favorite ones, especially because sometimes she's like, it's not necessarily she's talking about the same thing, but one of my favorite ones is specifically her use of barbed wire, and she used it
Ooh.
in Tolerate It, where she's like, "Where's that man who put wrapped all my past mistakes in barbed wire?"
No,
Wait,
who's the man who threw blankets over my
yeah,
barbed wire?
blankets
Yeah.
over my barbed wire, and then she used it again, and oh my gosh, it's because I brought it up that
Invisible
now.
string, the other one.
Thank, thank you.
I got you.
Like, thank you. Because the minute I decided I wanted to bring it up, it like disappeared. Like it's not one of my favorite things because it's like because now I'm about to recontextualize those two songs and put them next to each other, and it's like Invisible String to Tolerate It, and it like makes Tolerate It even sadder. Like it's just like oh, not this connection. Like and it's just so interesting to see her do it and constantly do it. Or like one of my favorite Taylorisms, and she's I think one of her first times doing this was in Starlight, where she tells a song and she tells a story in a song, but then like literally you said Starlight into The Last Great American Dynasty, where she ends the song being like, oh yeah, and it's me now, I'm here, I'm in this song. I love when she does this. I love it because she does it in You Are in Love, which You Are in Love is a beautiful song, but it also makes me so deeply sad sometimes when I realize that You Are in Love is Taylor looking at someone in love from the outside and then pulling back and being like, this is what I'm writing about and what I want to have. And it's just so interesting that Taylor like contemplates being a writer all the time over all her music, where she's like, I can write our song. I'm writing about this love that I want to reach. And it's so interesting. It's interesting. And I think you don't get that from artists who don't write their own music. Like you won't get that from them. Um yeah, it's just fun. It's fun. Like she's fun because she does this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob, we had a professor on here who's writing a book on she's like literally hand annotating like a Taylor Swift song and then they're gonna publish them in some cool way. And for her, she like has the best time. Like just like cross-referencing songs and figuring out, like where things connect and the words she used. I mean, I remember when she came out with Mr. Perfectly Fine and had used Casually Cruel previously. We
Yeah.
just hadn't known. She
Yeah.
literally just like was like, okay, that's a really good line. I'm not putting this song out. I will save it. And then she had a devastating heartbreak, and she's like, oh, this is where it's supposed to go. But then
Hmm.
she's like, oh, but don't worry, guys. I already had that. Like that's to me is so like I want to see
Oh,
that notebook.
no, I do. And you know what? It's such a interesting thing about Taylor as a writer that people don't believe she wrote songs when she says she did. Everybody's like, you did not write nothing new when you were 22. But I'm like, we know she did. Like, we know for a fact she wrote that song then because it's in the Lover journals before she even knew she was gonna do re-recording, right? It's memorialized back then where she said, I wrote this lyric for a song called Nothing New. And I don't think, and it doesn't come out. And then it comes out years later, and everybody's like, no way you were that good when you were 20. She's like, well, yes, I was.
She is precocious, guys.
Like, she's precocious and she's constantly thinking, oh my God, this is that fatalism that's in the prophecy where she's like, I want to control it. But it's in like again, you look at Speak Now, it's in Castles Crumbling, where she's like, maybe that was too dark to put out then, but I need everybody to realize now that I was 18, 19 waiting for them to replace me and
Yeah.
just knew I was gonna be replaced.
Yeah.
And now that turns up in like Clara Bow, where she's like, they're saying you look like Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
She's
That's
good at this.
wild. That's
Taylor
wild.
Swift is good at her job.
Yeah.
She
Um,
was she was always thinking long term, and she always has. And again, that comes from how freakishly immersed she is in pop music and in to the point where where we really do think she is planting these things and these she's like, I'm going to put some tattoos here, I'm going to come back to you, tattoos, don't you worry, tattoos. this isn't, we'll meet again. And there's, she's got so much of that in her songs. And I mentioned this before, but that great interview where she's 16 and she's explaining to the interviewer how the Beatles put little backwards messages on their album, because all the interviewer did was ask why there's capital letters on her CD booklet and her lyric sheet. And she's explaining how this works. And she is 16 and she is obsessive about that level of the presentation of her music, and also obsessive about that level of her connection with her fans. And that she is already speaking to fans who are girls who obsess over music in that geeky way that she does. And
She can always see the big picture. Like it's so cool.
yes,
Yeah.
always. It's
And
really
she's
kind of
aware of her
astounding.
own fault with it too, where she's like, I was so ahead that I fell back. Like it's so interesting for her to like think to see her work through the fact that because she's so obsessed with the big picture, sometimes the little things would get lost. And now she has to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rob, that is one thing I think I always appreciate about your reviews, and I'm really excited for in this book, is like your ability to slot Taylor into the bigger world of pop music. Like you said,
Yes.
you've been here you've been around a little longer than us
A little bit.
and many of our fans, and many of us are not, yes, as much as we love music, like we're not as obsessive as Taylor. Like we don't have as many James Taylor records as she does, right? It's just a thing. But that you're able to give us this context into how she fits into like the greater picture. So for example, if you guys don't know, a chapter of Rob's book was published via Rolling Stone. It's the chapter on All Too Well, and I think it's like 13 little vignettes on like your journey with All Too Well. And one of the stories you share is about how Stevie Nicks had lost her own velvet jacket, I think, and how you connected it to the lost scarf. And I never would have known that story, right? And this connection that Stevie and Taylor had if it weren't for your vast knowledge of the pop culture world at large. And so I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most in your book, is to like see how you put her in, you invisible string her to all the research and lore that she knows that we don't, just so like our third eye can open, as to like what that means, right? Because like within the Swift universe, like yeah, like a lot of us, like we know like the little Easter eggs and that story, but within the greater world of like the for example, even like uh yeah, like obviously like her relationship with Stevie, and with Paul, but I'm sure the book's going to be filled with like her connections to tons of other artists who like we may know, but we can dive into deeper through your book. So it is true, right? You do have her connection to more people.
Lots and lots
Don't
and
make
lots. Yes. But like a chapter, a chapter I personally love, it means a lot to me, is talking about how when she used to go on stage every night with song lyrics that she would Sharpie on her
it.
arms. So, and it's funny, like back when people would say like, oh, this, it's odd that she has these coincidental similarities to Joni Mitchell, although of course she's way too young to have heard Joni Mitchell. And you would say, no, actually, she like, has gone out on stage with Joni Mitchell lyrics literally written on her arm. She is that level of fan. She is someone who is wearing her devotion literally on her sleeve without even a sleeve.
Yeah.
She's actually going on stage with Bruce Springsteen lyrics or Neil Young lyrics or, you know, Dixie Chicks lyrics or all these artists that she looks up to. She's got their songs written on her while she's singing. And that's such a beautiful way of expressing her fandom. It's a very hip hop way to go, right? Because part of with hip hop, that the tradition has always been that you find your originality by linking to the icons from the past that you're recombining and recontextualizing. As the great hip hop critic Greg Tate said, hip hop is ancestor worship, that you're
Yep.
taking like all the things that went into making you who you are culturally, and you're combining them in new ways that express yourself, but also make the past new. And
Yep.
that's very much how Taylor approaches songwriting. I think she's a very hip hop
She's a hip
songwriter.
hop star. She's a hip
She
hop
never,
star.
she
Hip
is
hop
like,
daughter. Literally.
yes, yes. She never raps in her song. She never makes a fool out of herself trying to do a hip hop song. And yet there's something so hip hop about the way she treats past musical tradition as something alive and something to be played with in order to express who you are with that art of collage and bricolage. She's almost more like a songwriter as DJ rather than a
Exactly.
writer. She's
Exactly. Like exactly.
I,
With
I
Dear
wa-
John. She
yes,
performed like John Mayer with the guitar. Like that's a hip hop thing to do.
yes,
I have to
totally.
say before we move on, when Rob was describing how Taylor writes the
The
lyrics on her
scar.
sleeve, he's literally wearing a cardigan right now, guys. I just need you guys to know. Right, that
Speak now, Cardigan.
Hannah didn't get the memo because I'm wearing my Midnight's cardigan and Hannah's not wearing a cardigan.
guys, I'm in Los Angeles. It is not fall yet. I'm the earliest time zone, as in like it's the like you guys are later in the day. Like I still don't need a cardigan. It is still it is not quite fall yet here. Hopefully in the next couple days. But yeah, no, yeah, so I'm super excited to just see how um we see how you see Taylor in like the pantheon of these artists. You know, just because yeah, you have that longer view, and so I'm really excited. Um, the way we go ahead, Exquisite.
No, I was just thinking Taylor as hip hop is such an interesting essay that someone should write.
Ex
I need to
Yes. I
you
mean,
ex
she doesn't imitate hip hop. She doesn't try to do a hip hop song, but she thinks of music in that way that that hip hop DJs, and the way that they would drop breaks into the songs and just make a point of taking something from the past and making it new and inventing the future.
and you can tell that's why like Taylor is a student of music. Like of course she listens to everybody. It's like people like will watch her at like award shows and she's literally singing every song. It's like she knows. Like of course she knows what's happening out there. And I think it's just it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, Exquisite. You
Yeah.
should write that essay. You should
Maybe
write
I will.
it. Um, okay, I think we are gonna slowly start wrapping up, but is there, Rob, this is what I always ask to every person that I like to interview in general, not just on this podcast, but is there anything that you'd want to say about either the prophecy or your book or whatever that we just didn't ask, we didn't get to, that you just want to be like, just share your thoughts?
Well, the prophecy is unwritten. It's a fascinating song to me in terms of her evolution as a songwriter and singer. That she is um, very broken in this song. I mean, just the way that her voice falls apart sometimes, the way she sings the line, "I look unstable," and "I look unstable," and she just stumbles over the line. She doesn't do things like that usually. Um, and to me, it's a sign that she's always going somewhere new. And I guess part of what I tried to do in this book was do justice to an artist who's always in motion and always going somewhere new. And at any time, again, I've been writing about Taylor her entire career. I always know that whatever I write about Taylor, she's going to make it look foolish very quickly because she's going to do the opposite of what anybody predicts. Every time I've ever tried to predict her next move, I've been laughably wrong. I seriously did not think she was going to go through with the re-records. Nobody did, and also nobody's willing to admit now that they thought she was just bluffing. And so when I write about those in the book, I'm very explicit. I thought literally nobody thought she was actually going to do this. Everybody thought it was an empty threat. And for me,
You know,
part of the fun of writing about her over the years is she's always full of surprises because she never does anything the predictable way. And so none of these stories in her music are ever closed.
I love that. And I love that Taylor never makes an empty threat. Like she said she was gonna go pop. No one believed her. And well, she won album of the year with a pop.
Yeah, I never believe her. Never. It's always, and yeah, it's always a thing of when even when she says explicitly what she's going to do, that's never what she does. And so she's guaranteed. So you'll still be doing this podcast 50 years from now. You'll be like, okay, let's do, and you know uh, we're doing our 2024 like retrospect podcast in 2074. You'll be like going back and talking about the prophecy, and you'll be like, what, like we thought it meant this like 50 years ago. We didn't know like all the ways it was going to change. But she's seriously creating one of those gigantic songbooks that is just full
Oh.
of mysteries we'll spend years unpacking.
And
Yeah.
also she works a lot. And it's weird that she gets I don't know, like again, as Taylor is like a student of history and like the artists from like the 70s and 80s and 60s who were constantly putting out albums. Like they have like 50 albums by the time they're 10 years into their career. And it's just interesting to me that people and I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but it's interesting that people are upset that she is putting out such a large volume of work right now. But it's like I love how Taylor's current thought process is if it is done and if I want to share it, I should just be allowed to share it. And that's what she's going to do. And it would not surprise me if by the end of this decade, we have a good 15 more by the end
Yeah.
of 2020. If she just is like, I just feel like putting this one out. Because it's what the greats do now. Like she's like, I don't need to take 10 years in between albums. I don't have to and I don't want to because she works at she's so prolific. And I don't think people realize just how prolific she is.
And
She's constant.
if you have the muse and the creative energy, like you got to use it, right? Like it's just how it goes with
Exactly.
artists, right?
I
Like
like how she does it. She's allowing herself to feel now, I
yeah,
think. And that's
yeah,
very
yeah,
interesting and fun. Does
yeah.
whatever she wants.
And she just wants Rob to write another book because
Yeah.
yeah.
She's telling you to get to work.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Oh, we forgot to do the
Emoji.
emoji. So, Rob, we didn't even talk to you about this in the beginning. We were just too excited to have you. But what happens is, we usually assign an emoji to every song. I don't know how much of an emoji user you are, but like for example, I think for the albatross we had like an anchor or something. And I think for Chloe and Sophia and all of them. It was like a horse because like
A
wild
running
horse,
horse.
the running
Ooh.
horse, not just the horse head. Do you have any thoughts? Again, I'm putting you on the spot, so you can take your time. Of what emoji you would want to represent this song, and then when people comment on our social medias, they usually like send the emoji to say that they listened to it or something.
Is there a paperweight emoji?
There's probably
Actually, is there? I mean, there might be a rock.
yeah,
Is there a wolf?
I'm pretty
There's
sure there's a
definitely
wolf. Okay, I'm gonna look up wolf. There
I'm
is
gonna look
there
it
is
up
a
too.
wolf.
Pardon.
There is a wolf.
there's
I don't, let me see. I'm not going to look up paper. There is a boulder. Or I guess I mean, it's rock. All these emoji sizes are relative. There is a rock as well. Let's see. So yeah, or if there are any other idea.
yeah, there's literally a paper emoji and a weight emoji.
Like like a
If I'm
piece of
allowed to com if I'm allowed to combine, then I'm going to put a wolf and a moon.
a wolf and a moon. All
Okay.
right.
A
How
wolf
at
and
the
a moon.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
I like that.
So, dear
Oh,
listeners, that'll be your little way we know that you finished the episode. A wolf and a moon on the oh yeah, because yeah, that howling, it gets me.
oh,
Once I figured out like why is she oohing, and I was like, oh no, she's howling. That
Yeah.
just that breaks my heart a little bit more. But
oh,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
thank you, Rob, so much for joining us. We may have to drag you back here again once the book is out. And then
Please, please do.
um
I'm so
and
excited. It is such a fanboy thrill for me to be on this most amazing of
oh
Swiftian
Oh,
scholarship. I'm just honored by the company, honored to soak up your Swiftian expertise.
oh my
thank you.
goodness.
Oh, Hannah, we have to take a picture.
Oh, we will take a picture after this. Don't
Please.
worry.
Yes,
But also, Rob, can you once again remind us the title of the book, when it's coming out, and where we can get it?
Yes.
yes, it is. The book is called Heartbreak is the National Anthem: How Taylor Swift Reinvented Pop Music. It comes out on November 12th, and I sure hope you will enjoy.
Yeah, you guys, I think you can pre-order it anywhere. And if you don't know, pre-ordering is how the book gets to more places. It's like publishers really use that to figure out how much the book is in demand. It gets seen more, it gets placed higher. So please do pre-order it if you can. I know, Rob, you are doing a book tour. I think there are some dates out. So um
Yes. My Instagram is Robbie Chef.
so
So, and my Twitter is Rob Chef.
yeah,
But
so go there and you could find all the book tour dates. Which that book tour means he'll be there. So you can like say hello, buy the book, and things like
and
that. So
yes, and thank you. Yes, pre-orders are awesome. and it comes out November 12th, the anniversary of Red.
Oh my
Of
That was
God.
not
course.
an accident.
Of
Of
course.
course. Nothing is an
Of course.
accident.
No, it comes out on Red Day.
Well, I guess I mean, yeah, that like leads to a question I want to ask you because I feel like you're gonna say red, but it's like of Taylor's album, like what is the most Taylor? Not Taylor Swift like TM, like for those I would be like, oh, 1989 and also red, but what is the most like Taylor, do you think?
Wow, what a question. You know, I would have said Red right up to the day that Folklore was released. Um, Part of my journey with Folklore was it was agony to listen to because I always thought Red was always going to be the best one, and uh, it was really kind of tough. My first, 11 or 12 hours of listening to Folklore on repeat. That's really like it really took up to 11 or 12 hours to say, you know what, this is just even better than Red. I can't believe that this has happened. Um, yeah, folklore is the one. Evermore is the most. Um, I'm going to say Evermore is the most Taylor. That's the side of her that um,
Yeah.
is most specific to her, that has been copied least, is less connected to anyone else. Um, she gets really weird and really personal on Evermore. Vents a lot of these sides of her personality that she normally balances out with other sides of her personality. Um, and Evermore is just, it's so extreme. That to me was the album that was most transformed by the Eras tour and by seeing it live. That these songs, Evermore, I mean, I think of Evermore, I thought of Evermore as the album that came out, in the pandemic, in the winter, when everybody was really frazzled and isolated and scared. And we listened to those songs by ourselves in headphones. Like most people, I associate Evermore with that holiday that I didn't get to see anyone in my family because nobody
Mhm.
could travel. And so to see those songs in a stadium and 80,000 people singing those loneliest of Taylor songs just completely transformed them for me. And I think that that's where Tortured Poets, the first half at least, comes from directly, which is she's like, wow, all these Evermore songs turned into stadium bangers. Why don't I just record them as stadium bangers, even though they're Evermore songs at heart? Um, but so just even like for the very beginning of that era, on the Eras tour when it's "'Tis the Damn Season," and just that overwhelming sense of transformation. It's like, wow, all these like incredibly solitary, Taylory songs are suddenly these big communal sing-alongs. That's to me the essence of a Taylor experience. So I'm going to
Oh,
say
that's so,
Evermore is the most Taylor of all Taylor albums.
Rob, that
oh,
answer hit like 50 things that
so
I want to comment
good.
on. Like, oh, I
50,
can't,
I know, I
you
just want to
can't
keep
do that. You can't do that
talking.
because you're
Oh,
right. Red, like I'm gonna just recap that for everybody.
Taylor is a solitary entity.
Yeah,
Yes.
like that you say, and then you saying that, and that's what TTPD is also these, right? Like, yeah, Down Bad is a very solitary song, right? But she's like, but what if I made it like what if I made it like Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna make this into a stadium, like with like a floating bed and like a man with a typewriter. Like, oh my gosh, you just changed
Ah,
Exquisite's life.
no, because and the thing is that's literally like the thesis of the prophecy is that Taylor knows she's a solitary person and she's scared she's going to be alone forever because of that.
Yes.
And again, Evermore, which is her much ignored daughter, of it being like it is so alone, like alone. Like Folklore was alone, but she's like, I'm striving to connect with everyone through this. And then Evermore is like, the loneliest time is winter because you're stuck in and we're extra stuck in. And then being able to sing that with everyone, she's like took the loneliness and it no longer hurts because everyone is also like a communal loneliness. And so it's like, yeah, that's Taylor. That's why we listen to her. That's why, like, again, from the outside, how am I ever supposed to get better if no one ever lets me in? And this is us letting her in and her letting us in. Oh, you're so good at this.
This was so
You're so
good.
good at this. But
Okay.
yes, she's so. I mean, the isolated also. Just the fact that she takes, and again, like Tortured Poets and Evermore are so connected for me in so many ways. But that folklore, she was like, okay, I'm writing these really sad, lonely, isolated songs, but I'm creating characters. Don't forget, I'm creating characters. Remember, these are not characters. These are not aspects of my personality that I keep hidden. No,
That's
no, no.
Jane.
Yes, fictional characters. Fictional. I let my imagination run wild. And evermore, she's like, yeah, I'm not bothering to pretend anymore. These are all extreme aspects of my personality that I really try to hide. And that's
Oh,
partly why that album is so powerful to
Yeah,
me.
I
and
mean,
this is why
like,
people don't get closure. It's like that's
Yes.
her angriest and most discordant, not trying to ease people in. She's pissed off and drunk.
Yes.
with her spite
Writing
and her
letters
beers and her
addressed,
candles.
yes, writing letters addressed to the fire. And and one of the quintessential only Taylor lines is like retracing my steps to find, the stone where I went wrong. Um,
Like, oh,
The
which is okay.
prophecy. That's
Yeah, that's exactly the prophecy.
on
Um,
all it does is pause on the very moment all was lost. Like, wow.
yes.
yeah, yeah. No,
Oh,
no, it's
oh,
whew, that was a journey. Yeah,
yeah.
that was amazing because you started with Red, and then you're like folklore, and then you're like, but I agree. Folklore and Red, I think, are her like two titans, but Evermore, I think, is so Taylory, like of the right, because she really was just like, it's a sister album. I'm just gonna put whatever I want on there, and then you get songs like Happiness, right,
Yep.
next to a song like Long Story Short. You're just like, and
Yeah.
then Ivy and Cowboy Like Me, Coney, that run, that Dorothea, Coney Island, Ivy,
Yeah.
Marjorie. Oh my
Evermore,
gosh.
the song itself that is just like that.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Oh my God. Which
Yeah.
is why Speak Now, Evermore, and Tortured Poets Department are all intrinsically linked.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so. I
They're
think those are the
all
three that I kind of put
interconnected.
together for those. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Wow. Yeah.
That was
Wow. That was
okay.
good.
Okay, no, that was a good. That's a perfect. Okay, that's a high note. We're gonna end there. We could talk for another 13 hours, I'm
Oh,
sure.
good
But
God, we sure could.
yeah, but
Thank you so much. What a joy for
Thank
me.
you.
so grateful. Thank you, listeners. Please, just you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, a bunch of other places. Follow us on socials. Again, Rob is at Rob Chef with double F on Twitter, and Robbie 2B with two B's Chef on Instagram. And so you can follow him there as well. I'll put it all in the show
And
notes.
read his articles because they're
Oh,
fantastic.
I'm gonna link to some of the articles. I'll link to your book too, in
They're
the show notes.
fantastic and
Thank you.
shameless and fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
Completely
Shameless is
even
key.
shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shameless is key. Yes.
All
As
right.
as as she said at NYU, a fan of not hiding your enthusiasm for things. That
Amen. I
is,
love that.
I live by that too. I know all three of us do.
All right. Thanks again. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much.